Hey everyone, good morning and good afternoon and good evening for someone. Okay, hey guys, so let's start with today's session. Let's wait for a while. I think people are still joining in. In the meanwhile, if anyone has any question related to this course, please do ask me while we are waiting for others to join. Anyone? Any question? Any doubt?
Rohit, good morning. Sanjay here.
Hey Sanjay, good morning.
Just wanted to know how the job market about like Azure DevOps top of the AWS DevOps.
Okay, so when you're into DevOps, it's not Azure or AWS or Jenkins and such. Okay, when you
Okay.
talk about job market, if you see Google trend for last 2 years, if you're comparing Apple to Apple, that's Azure and AWS, then you'll find Azure at the very top right now. But in DevOps, when you can jump into DevOps world, it's not about the tools. It's all about the process, what you know the best. Okay, if you know how to build Java, you can do it on AWS also, you can do it on Azure also, you can do it on Jenkins, Octopus. There are many tools in the market. So it's all about the knowledge you have. And if you go for any big MNCs, they will definitely prefer Azure or AWS. All these are big players and they have some SLA signed agreements with them. So they prefer all these tools. Answering to your question, Azure and AWS, then definitely Azure as compared to AWS, because AWS is not that user friendly, and for AWS you have to jump around other tools for integration, wherein in Azure, if you see, everything is there inside one umbrella. Your work item management, your CI/CD pipelines, your repository management, your artifact management, and there are many things. And it can be easily integrated with all other tools. You can integrate with Jenkins if you want to run your build on Jenkins and do your deployment on Azure DevOps. Even that is possible. You can connect with other messaging tools like Slack and all. And you can even connect to all the services of Azure Cloud. So that is but on the other side, even AWS has their own benefits, its own features and everything. So yeah, depend which project, which company, what type of tool they are using, the requirement will differ. But being a DevOps engineer, you don't have to segregate yourself like I am AWS, I am Azure. No, you are a DevOps engineer. That's it. Keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank.
let's start, guys. Let's start with today's session. Let me quickly start sharing my screen while others are joining in. Hopefully my screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay, the very first thing, guys, hopefully everyone has registered and signed in to Azure Cloud using the free tier. If you don't have free tier, you can switch to pay as you go. As I said earlier, whatever services we will be using, that will be very minimalistic. You will not get charged much. So this is the documents I've already shared with everyone through email. So just go through it. If you have not created or signed in, please make sure sign in and create a subscription, a free tier subscription. If you already have Azure Cloud, pay as you go will also work. That's totally fine for me. Okay, this is a document, it's already shared. If not, I will definitely share it again with you guys. Okay, today let's go and log into the portal. I've already signed in. Even I am using a free tier right now. I am not using my main account because even I wanted to see how much charges I'm getting. Give me 1 minute. Okay, so when you sign in, go to the website portal.azure.com. This is my new account. Okay, let me. Okay, Ahmed, I'll share it with you, but that is shared across everyone on an email. So no worries, if I not receive it, I'll share it again with you. This is my new and that's the reason it's asking for all these things. Okay, so once you sign in, guys, this is the page what you will see. Okay, so the topic which we are covering today is virtual network. Why exactly I'm starting with virtual network? The reason is, before we jump on and start creating VMs, start talking about all the other services, you need to know networking part first. Okay, that is the whole purpose why exactly we are covering networking first. So when we start with Azure Cloud, there are multiple topics which we'll cover, which is virtual net machine, virtual networking, Active Directory, storage account, key vault, app services, Kubernetes services. There are many more. These are the things which we'll talk about in Azure Cloud. So this much of information is very much needed in Azure Cloud. So before we jump on and start talking about virtual networking, the first thing we need to understand the cloud concept. What exactly is the cloud? What are the different concepts in cloud? So you might have heard SaaS, PaaS, infra as a service, on-prem. These are all types. Okay, these are all the types. What exactly these are? What is SaaS? So as the statement says, SaaS is a platform involves software that is available via third party over the internet. That's software as a service. So basically the provider sell access to the application, software and database. So whoever the provider is, okay, for example, whoever the provider is, they are selling access to their application. They are giving an application to you, they are giving the database to you, and on top of it they are building the complete web browser and everything. Either it would be a web browser or it will be a client program which you will be installing or you will be using through a web browser. That is what SaaS is all about. So what are the typical example of SaaS? Google Workspace, Salesforce, these are all SaaS platform. Okay, these are also cloud. So the only thing is the setup is all done at the Salesforce side. They have their own data center, they are doing the setup, they have installed the application, they have built the application, they have created everything, in short. And just they gave you the web browser, a link, salesforce.com, and followed by your organization name, and you're able to start working on that application. That is what SaaS is all about. On the other hand, we got PaaS. PaaS is nothing but it's a platform as a service. Now platform as a service focus primarily on hardware and software tools available on the internet. So what exactly is it? These are all typical definition. Let me take it into a very layman term. So platform as a service is you can call it as a sales model in which the customer buys the virtual access to the servers and the infrastructure they need. Very classic example of PaaS is Azure's web apps, wherein you have the platform ready. What you do, you get your code, you deploy on top of it, and your web application is deployed successfully. Another example is AWS Beanstalk. These are all PaaS services. You have the hardware, you have the required tools deployed on top of it. What you're doing, you're just getting the required application of yours and you're deploying on top of it. That is what PaaS. Okay. Now the next part is infrastructure as a service. Now infrastructure works primarily with cloud-based pay-as-you-go service such as storage, networking, and virtualization. So infra is a service wherein provider sells access to virtualized resources. All virtual resources access will be given, the servers, the network, the storage, and typically even your companies will be using enterprise version. So the typical example will be AWS Azure. So this is what you see. This is nothing but it's an infrastructure as a service cloud concept which we are using, wherein you get everything virtualized. You have your VM. By one click you will be creating a VM. By one click you will be creating your dedicated network. By one click you will be creating your own storage, data lake, data hub, and everything on cloud. That is what infra as a service is all about. And last but not the least, you get on-prem. On-prem is typical your own data center. Now what do you understand by data center? Data center is nothing but it's a typical location wherein you have your own compute. When I say compute, I'm talking about CPU, I'm talking about memory, I'm talking about wherein you have your own network setup, you have your own firewall, you have your own router, you have your own switch, you have your own bracket where everything is installed, and on top of it all these machineries are installed, and you have your own power line, you have your own AC connection, AC DC connection, everything. So this is the complete setup when you do at a particular location. That location is called as infrastructure, on-prem data centers. And then on top of it you have a link connected to your office through which you're getting the network, and through a web pages you're browsing everything. So this is a web page which is given by Azure to you. Same way AWS will have its own web page. So what they even Azure, AWS, all these players, Google, GCP, they have their own data center. The only difference is they are managing and maintaining those data center by them, and plus it's not in one or two places. They have their data center throughout this world. You will see data centers in India, you'll see in US, China, whichever country you name it, they have their data center. So they call it as zone. Asia Pacific zone, China, US, South America, North America, UK. So everywhere they have their own data center. So like if I am going to set up my own data center, it's a very costly affair. It's very easy for me to go and use all these services and start running my business. That easy it is nowadays. Okay, so keeping that in mind, this is how your cloud concept works. So on-prem, there are companies, they have hybrid infrastructure. What do you mean by hybrid? Nothing but they have portion of their things getting deployed on cloud like Azure, AWS, GCP. Portion of their things getting deployed on-prem. They have their own data center, somewhere one or two data center wherein they are deploying things. But nowadays, while we have already entered 2023, no new company is setting up its own data center. They are all focused on cloud, because setting up a data center, as I said, it's a very costly affair. Okay, so that is cloud. Now how this responsibility gets shared, this is very important to understand. Now we saw SaaS, we saw PaaS, we saw infra as a service on-prem. How this responsibility, who is responsible for doing what? Now if you see at the left hand side, give me a minute. When you see a left hand side, responsibility always retained by the customer. So this is like people like you and me who are responsible for doing things. Like in case of SaaS, information and data is my responsibility to take care. Devices, mobile and PC, which connects to that particular application, that is my responsibility. Accounts and identity, it's my responsibility. Now in case of infra as a service, now if you see responsibility to transfer to cloud, physical network, physical data center, physical host, this is all Microsoft responsibility. Okay, I am talking about this service. Now do you go and handle the physical host? Will you go and check if any of the compute, like the CPU, has gone bad? Will you go and replace it? No. This is whose responsibility? Microsoft responsibility. But if you could come to the extreme right, on-prem, this is completely customer's responsibility, because this is your data center. It's your baby, correct? You're taking care of everything. Okay, this is how this responsibility gets divided into Microsoft, the vendor, customer, and shared. There could be a scenario where responsibility could be shared, like in case of PaaS, network control, application, the application you are deploying, they will get you the setup. Like suppose you're deploying a Java Maven web application, so they will have the Java install, JDK version install, all this, the right necessary tool install. But on top of it, if you need anything additional, that is something you need to install it by yourself. That is the reason it is showing shared over here in case of PaaS. Okay, so this is what cloud is all about. Cloud, we say cloud, it's not that it's the data center is there in the cloud, in the sky. No, this is just they have multiple data center at multiple hot points wherein you can easily connect. Like if I'm sitting in India, I'm in Mumbai. Mumbai has its own data center for Azure. So if I'm creating any resources, I'll make sure that I'll select Mumbai as my region. When I say Mumbai, my data and everything will get stored into Mumbai location. I cannot, now same goes with companies. Okay, there are data restriction. Look, if you're working for a US company, you cannot select region as Mumbai, because if you're selecting Mumbai as a region, your data will get transferred into Mumbai, and that is again you're not abiding to the law, the local law over there. So you cannot pass on any data to Mumbai region. So you have to be very specific. You have to select North or South America region, like US East and all. So this is, there are data restrictions. You cannot transit your data. But if any country, if there's no data restriction, you can go and select whichever region you want. The only difference you will find, latency, delay, that is very minimal. Let me tell you, that is very minimal. Azure and AWS networking is very strong. Even if I go and select sitting in Mumbai, even if I go and select US East, I'll be able to do things very quickly. It will not give me much latency. I'll not even come to know there was a millisecond latency in the backdrop. Okay, that kind of service we are talking about. Okay, so this was about shared responsibility. So let's start with the topic, that is virtual network. Before I jump on to the topic virtual network, I want to ask you guys, what do you understand by networking? Now, I'm not talking about networking from typical IT perspective. I'm talking about networking from a very common perspective, like social networking, office networking, your friend zone networking. What exactly do we mean by the word networking over here? Can anyone tell me?
So basically, networking can be said to be a way to associate or connect different elements into a unit.
Perfect. Anyone else wants to add something? No? So when I say networking, am I talking about connection, communication, handshake, passing information? Now, when you go to a party, it's a social networking. What do? You meet and greet. You meet and greet people over there. Correct? You pass on information. You chat. You handshake. You greet people. That is what you do. Correct? Same goes with office networking. Any office party, anywhere you go. So this is what networking typical means. The same concept in information technology. Networking is same. Your IP packets are getting transferred, it is accepted, a handshake is done, a confirmation is sent to you. This is what networking means in real time. Now let me give you a very typical example, and let's understand networking from that example perspective. Now let's open a paint. Think of your home computer. You have a home computer. Let's talk about a CPU. You have a CPU. Okay, a CPU is connected with a modem. You have your NIC card over here. A NIC card is nothing but it's a network interface card through which you will be able to connect your LAN. A NIC card is over here, and you at the top you will have a black box, something like this, that is known as modem, and through a LAN card this is connected to a modem. Modem is nothing but it's a demodular. It's translates your signal which you're receiving. Okay, this is how it is connected. Now from this modem, this is your talking about your home network. Now this modem, you will have some wire going in to your wireless device. Let's take an example. This is your router. Now through this router you will have multiple other devices connected. Your phone, your laptop, and all these will be connected. Now there will be one more wire coming in from your modem that is connected to somewhere to a switch. This is a typical example of switch wherein there are multiple devices connected. This is how a LAN, that's a local area network, is created. This entire setup what you see This is a typical example of a local area network. Okay, nowadays there is no concept of modem, it's an old concept. Now these two devices are clubbed together, your modem and the router. So your wireless device itself, they will have a modem also, and it will work as a router also, which can connect wirelessly, then it can also connect wired. Both the ways it can connect. Now this switch, I'm talking about your setup. Okay, now there is a bungalow next to you, or if you're living in a building, suppose you're there on the 6th floor, okay, and there are multiple houses on the 6th floor. So through these switches, even they will get their own network. What ISP people will do, ISP is nothing but internet service providers. What they will do, they will come and connect to this. They will get a wire from their house and they will connect to this switch. So multiple networks can be created from this switch. Now suppose if they want to connect to some other building, so they will have one more switch somewhere in between, and through a wire they will connect the other building, other building, other building. Same this way they will connect the whole area. That is known as wide area network. And then a wire will go to the ISP from where the internet is passing through. This is how a complete network structure is created, not just in house but in offices also. Even office has the same concept, guys. Nothing different they do. In your office, the only difference you will find is they will have their own data center. They will, even though if they don't maintain a data center for compute, they will have a data center at least for networking. They will, wherein they will have their own switches, they will have their own router, they will have a wireless device connected everywhere, because there are hundred of PCs to connect through LAN, through wireless. So they will need to have all this setup done in offices. Now just replicate the same concept, the entire concept what you see now, just replicate the same concept with cloud. Don't you think we need to have same kind of setup in cloud as well? Even in cloud you have devices, correct? You will have your VMs, you will have your storage account, you will have your databases, you will have your other services which is running on cloud which you want to connect to. Okay, so you need to provide some kind of network mechanism to them. Now in order to do that, we got virtual network in Azure. Virtual network is nothing but it's a representation of a cloud network. You will have a dedicated instance, like when I say instance, a dedicated network created for your services. Even though the underlying on your, if at the data center side, if you go, they will have shared firewall, shared router, shared switches, but you will not even come to know. In cloud, when you're creating a virtual network, it will be created on the shared devices in the backdrop, but you will not even come to know. You can even have a dedicated one. The only difference is you have to pay a good amount if you go for a dedicated, that I want my dedicated router, I want my dedicated firewall, I want my dedicated bracket. If you have any such requirement, the cost will be very high. You will have option. So in cloud you have to, if you are working as a cloud admin, so the first thing you have to be very sure about the charges and all. We'll talk about from the DevOps perspective. You don't have to worry about the charges and all, but yeah, definitely you have to take care of charges, like how much we are getting charged. You have to calculate. We'll see the Azure calculator and everything later in this course, but yeah, you have to, in the backdrop, you have to keep something in mind. Now, what is virtual network? Virtual network is nothing but it's a logical representation of your network in the cloud. So the logical representation which I just showed you, your home network, keep that in mind. How your computer devices are connected to network, how it is receiving internet, how you are able to connect to. And one more thing, did I delete paint? Okay, no worries. One more thing, so each devices you saw, the CPU, the router, the switches, every device will have a particular IP, and especially your local device through which you're connecting to internet, it will have its own public IP. Mostly it will have a dynamic IP assigned to you, so that will keep changing, because for static IP you have to pay additional to the ISP. If you want to have a static IP which is fixed, which will not change, then you have to pay additional for that. In my case, if you want to see what's my public IP, I can simply go and I can look into https what's my ip.com, and you can see what is your public IP. See, this is IPv6, which you're seeing it right now. This is how a public IP gets assigned, right? Okay, this is static in nature. Same way, even in cloud, if you're creating a VM, that VM will have a public IP. Then only you can connect to cloud using that VM. Okay, let's go back. So, representation of cloud, it's a logical representation of network in the cloud. Dedicated instance, so each VNet instance in Azure is provided dedicated, so it's a dedicated instance network. So if you have created a network, so inside your network, whatever resources, services you host, only those services will work, not any other service will work. Hybrid scenarios, connectivity between Azure services, so easily you can connect to all the other Azure services. You can create dedicated line, private links, service endpoints. There are many things you can connect to many services in Azure. So a typical example of Azure virtual network is the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. So basically you're creating a private network for your resources in Azure. VNet enables many types of Azure resources such as Azure Virtual Machine to securely communicate with each other. So if you want to have a secure communication done between two VMs, or between VM or storage account, between VM or database, that can be easily done using VNet. Okay. Now let's go and see practical example of how the VNet and things will look like. Now just think of this as a virtual network which you would be creating. This virtual network will have a typical private IP, that's 10.1.0.0/16. Now this /60 is not this nothing but it's subnetting. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this is how your virtual network will be created, wherein this is the private IP. Okay, this is a very big IP range I'm talking about right now, guys. So this, if I go and calculate this IP range, this will be around more than 65,000 plus IPs, which is available for me to go and allocate to my resources. This big range I'm talking about. If you do a subnetting, so this is how it is divided. Wait. If you do a subnetting mask, this is how it will look like. 255.255.0.0/16. This is what I am talking about. So this is how the IPs will be assigned. Now 255.255.1.0, 0.2.0, this is how the number goes on. So if you do a calculation, quick calculation, then it is more than 65,000. If you want to see, we can quickly open an IP calculator online. So you have to have a bit of understanding of networking. No, I'm not telling you guys to be a networking expert, go and do CCNA and all. No, a bit of knowledge of networking. The reason is, when you go into cloud, you create your own private network, you create your own subnet, you create your own gateways, you create your own NSGs, ASGs. So a bit of networking knowledge will eventually help you to go further. From DevOps perspective, this is not that required, but having networking knowledge will have a added benefit for yourself. Okay, that is the reason we will not talk more about networking, because then people will start getting bored. No, so bit of knowledge of networking is more than enough just to create your own infra, create your own virtual network, manage your own public IP, manage your own DNS, do your own domain mapping. That is more than sufficient. Okay, so if you want to calculate quickly, open anyone. Okay, subnet, this is what the subnet we have selected, 16. And if you want to have your IP 10.1.0.0, calculate. See the total number of usable hosts, 65,534 IPs can be allocated. see the range. This is how the IP range will be. So that is what I'm saying. Okay, same goes with, so such a big network, you should have a process to break down this network, correct? So that process is known as subnetting. So it's a large network which we are talking about, 65,000. So what subnetting does, subnetting is the practice of dividing a network into two or more smaller networks. When I say smaller networks, what I'm talking about, I can have a subnet created. Let me have a space over here. I can have a subnet created and I can give a IP range to this subnet. So I have to give this IP within this range which I have selected at my virtual network. Something like 10.1.0.0/24. Now from where I am getting this 2416? So if you come down, this first segment is 8-bit, the second is 8-bit 16, this third is 8, the fourth block is 8. So this way 8, 16, 24, 32. This is how IPv4 is divided, and this is what subnet mask is all about. So what did I do? I have break this big network into a small subnet. Now how the IPs will be assigned? 10.1.1. So in total till this place the range is taken. Now it will be 10.1.0.1. So around 254, it's total 255, but one is reserved. So around 254 private IPs can be allocated. Now in this subnet I can have my VMs. I'll have my Azure VM created. I can have my database created. I can have my SQL database created. I can have my SQL DB created. This will have some sort of IP assigned automatically. This will have a private IP, something called 10.1.0.1. Let's take that example. And this your database will have some other IP allocated. 10.1.1.0.2. Now if you have any other device, then it will have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like this way. This is what subnetting does. It will break your bigger, larger network into small network. What are the benefits? It will have it increases your routing efficiency. Your routing efficiency will be increased. It will enhance security. If any hacker is trying to enter your network, this is one layer where the security will be there. This is other layer now. The security is enhanced. Okay, and it will also reduce the size of your broadcast domain. So this is a very big size I'm talking about. 65,000 IPs. It's a very big size, and you're taking unnecessary wasting many private IPs if you take this way in real time. So this is a pretty big size which you can reduce to a lower size also. So this is how subnetting will help you do things. Okay, any question before we start doing things in practical and start actually building all this? Anyone? Any question? Any doubt? No questions, guys?
Yeah, I do, please. So how do you break the bigger IP into a smaller IP that you have 10.10024?
This is how subnet calculation happens. Okay, so you have a range. Now the virtual network, you have given a range over here. So the first two you have taken. By defining 16 over here, you cannot put IP numbers over here. Okay, so now this is a big range. I break this big range into one more bit. So when I'm creating a subnet, I've added 24 at the end. So that means the first 3 octane is already taken. This is 8-bit. Okay, so I can put only numbers here last. 1, 2, 3 till 254 I can go. I cannot go till 255 because that is taken, that is reserved. So this is how I'm breaking the network. Don't worry, I'll show you when we do practicals. You will see over there, you'll get the count, how much IPs you will be assigned, and how exactly it is getting breaked. Okay, I'll show you in practical, Ahmed.
Okay.
Okay, how can we decide which series IP we will go? Okay, so Sanjay, it's a very good question. Series IP, there are three types of three classes of IP: class A, class B, class C. 10.1 is a private IP series. Then you have the second series of one starting with 172. The third series is starting with 192. That is the three classes which you have. So the next B and class C is basically used for mostly for public IPs allocation, and the series A, the class A series, is mostly used for a private IP. The same way like 10.1.0 like this. That is how IP series are decided in companies. Okay. So if you come to this, I think you'll have series over here. Class A, class, see this, class A, class B, class C, or any. And if we now we have IPv6 also. Now you already saw how things are getting into IPv6. You saw my public IP, that was IPv6, not IPv4. Okay, let's go and create. So when you come to this section, I'm just creating this same thing, guys. I'm not creating anything different. Whatever I thought over here in this diagram, this is the exact same thing we'll be creating. Okay, look for virtual network or just look for VNet at the top, and if you see the VNet, you will have a virtual network created. Before I go and create a virtual network, there is a concept. Whatever resource you create in cloud, it's the first thing you have to create is a resource group. Then you will have your actual, if it's a paid service like a VM and all you're creating, then you have to create a service plan which will figure out what kind of VM you're creating, what are the charges and things like that. That is the plan you have to select. And the third thing is the service. In case of virtual network, there is no service plan or such, but when you create VMs and all, this is how the flow will look like. So resource group is nothing but it's a grouping of similar kind of resources into one group. Now previously, if you go back in Azure, there was no resource group concept. Okay, resource group was launched in the year 2013 and thereafter. Prior to that, each and every resources were handled dedicatedly. If you want to, suppose if you're creating a VM, so VM is not the only thing which gets created. When you're creating a VM gets created, a storage account gets created, a disk gets assigned, a NIC card gets created, a public IP gets created, a network gets created. There's so many other services getting created. Correct? With just one single VM, there's so many other things gets created. So if you don't have a resource group concept where the things are getting grouped together, it was very difficult to manage. Like suppose if you want to give access to someone to that VM, you need to go individually and go and give access at each places. One problem. The second problem was if you want to delete the resources, then you need to go and delete each and every resource. So if you miss on any of it, then that is still lying in your cloud account and you're getting charged for that. With resource group, everything gets managed dedicatedly at this level. That means you'll have a resource group. If you want to assign access to anyone, you can to the VM, then you give access at the resource group level and he will automatically get access to all other services inside that resource group. Management become very easy. If you want to delete the resources, just delete this resource group and all your underlying resource will be deleted. The previous one was classic one. It's still there, it's not gone anywhere, guys. It's still there. It's in the phase of getting phased out. So sooner or later Microsoft will go and remove this classic one and they will only stick with resource group one. This is what, so just keep this in mind. This was changed in the year 2013 and that was a drastic change. Okay, it made Azure cloud look very good in front of AWS. As we know, AWS was booming at that point of time because AWS started in the year 2007 and at that time no one was the competitor for AWS. No one was nearby also. Okay, Now after 2013, now if you see the graph, it's not that different right now. Okay, so let's go and create a virtual network, guys. So in order to create a virtual network, just click on create. Okay, if you see my subscription, I'm using a free trial. So the first thing you need to create, as I said, it's a resource group. Without resource group, you cannot proceed further. So the first thing what we create is a resource group. Let's go and create a resource group. Let's name the resource group as devopsmela-rg. That's the name of the resource group. This already exists. Let me go and delete that first. Okay, let's create a virtual network now. It's still deleting. Let's use a different name, rg-1. Okay, that's my resource group name. What is the instant detail? So basically it is asking you what's your virtual network name. So let's name it as devopsmela-vnet. Okay, region. Which region you want to select? There are so many regions. So basically region, as I said earlier, it's nothing but in this location they have their data center. Then they will have zone. In one region they may have multiple data centers, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. Like if you talk about India, they have data center in Mumbai, they have it in Chennai, and I think they have it in Bangalore also. So 3 states. Where in US, if you talk about, they have around 7-8 data centers. So that is how zone gets divided. Okay, so let's stick with West Europe also. Let's stick with West Europe for now. So you can select, may just stick with US. Let's stick with this East US. Okay, why? No specific region. East US is basically, if you're using free trial, so you will have limitation. You cannot create resources in any region. You will have limitations. So in East US, you can create VMs and all. You cannot create multiple VMs, but yeah, 1 or 2 VMs you can create in free trial in East US. So that is the reason I've selected East US as my region. This is how the IP address range can be decided. So this is how it has taken the range. If you see, it has taken the range 10.0.0.0/16. How many IPs can be allocated? 65,536. Very similar to mine. The only difference is I have taken this both octane, and I have selected 16. The same thing is done over here also automatically. If you don't want this range, you want to select your own, you can just put 1 over here. That's okay. It's the same thing, nothing different. It's the exact same thing. Okay, if you want to use sub IPv6, you can tick this box and you can start using IPv6 if you have knowledge of IPv6. Now this is a place where you can add subnet. I can add my own subnet. I can give a subnet name as, I'll name it as VM1 subnet, because I'll be allocating this subnet to my VM1. And within this range I need to break the big broadcast range into a small range. So I'll be selecting this. So I'll name it as 10.1.0.0/24. How many IPs will be assigned? 251 plus 5 Azure reserve address. So this is reserved by Azure. So for purposes like security, there are many things what they do. This is how it gets reserved. Okay, now this is NAT gateway and all we'll talk about later. Service endpoints, we'll talk about those later. For now, I have created my own IP address virtual network and I've given my own subnet. Bastion host, DOS, firewall, this is something we'll talk about later. For now, tagging is very important. From the billing perspective, let's name it as, this is used by development team. Development. Okay, so at the end, the billing which will come with the name development. So you'll come to know how much costing was done for development. So it is very easy. If you do a good tagging, it's always good to do tagging from the pricing perspective, for the at the end billing perspective. Review and create. So what exactly we did? We created a virtual network, we created a subnet. Okay, now inside this I'll have a VM created for now. So as I said, if you want to connect a VM to internet, what you have to do? You have to assign a public IP. The way my system has a public IP, even your system, your laptop, if you go and look into you will have a public IP assigned. Okay, without public IP you cannot connect to internet, guys. So a public IP needs to be assigned, and this VM, as I said, I give an example that my computer has a NIC card, that's a network interface card, through which a public IP will be assigned to that particular card, and through which I'll be able to connect to internet. So even for your VM you will have a NIC card assigned. You will have a NIC card assigned to your VM, to which a IP will be assigned. NIC is network interface card. Okay, and through, now like suppose if you want to connect through internet, and this is how, like suppose this is the internet, this is how you'll be able to connect to your VM from public sources. Okay, now how the traffic gets filtered and all, we'll talk about that later. It's a different concept. For now this is basically what we will do. Okay, now this is your virtual network got created. Let's wait for a while. Okay, done. Now what all things we created? We created a virtual network. I'm not creating the database for now. This is just for example. I'm not creating this database. Now the VM needs to be created, and a public IP needs to be assigned, a NIC card needs to be assigned, and there are many things, many other things which needs to be assigned, but for now let's focus on this part. So we have a virtual network. If I go and look into my virtual network, this is how the virtual network will look like. This is the name of the resource group, this is the IP address range, and this is a virtual network ID. And if you come to subnet, this is the subnet which we have created. How many IPs I can allocate in this subnet? 251 IP. Okay, now let's create a VM. Now if you want to create a VM, you can just simply look into the search and look for virtual machine. Okay, I can simply go, and there are many other options. So I can click on this option to create a virtual machine. So you can create a Windows Linux virtual machine from here. I can create the virtual machine in the same subscription group. Remember, we have a subscription group over here. What's your virtual machine name? I can simply name it as VM1. Region, I'll keep East US, because if you guys try any other region, guys, there is a great chance that you may get error, limitation error. That is because you're using a free tier, and only specific region has VM's allocation for free tier. Okay, so I'm selecting East US, and availability options, we'll talk about this in greater details, like what is availability zone, what is virtual machine scale set, what is availability set and all, what is load balancer. This is all we'll talk in a greater details later. For now I'm just creating a VM just to showcase how networking works. Security type, I'll stick with standard for now. Image, I'll be using Linux machine over here, but we can switch around Windows and Linux both. For now I'll stick with Ubuntu Server 1804 LTS. LTS stands for long-term support. So this is still eligible to, and if you see this tag free service eligible, that means it falls into a free tier. That is the reason I am using this Ubuntu. VM architecture will stick with x64. Now if you see the size, there are multiple size, there are multiple families. We'll talk about these families later when we deep dive into VM virtual machine. At that time I'll talk about the sizes and all. Now if you see this, automatically it has selected 1 vCPU standard B1S 1 GB memory. What is the cost? 546 Indian rupees, which is roughly around $6-7 per month. If I keep this VM on for a complete month, that is the amount I will get charged. This is just a VM compute cost. On top of it, you will have a public IP cost, you will have a data cost, because there will be a data disk which will be assigned to this particular VM, plus there will be a in and out networking cost. So roughly $10, guys, if you're keeping this active for the complete month. Okay, that is how the calculation. I'll show you the exact calculation, how the calculation works later in this course, but just keep this in mind. This is just your VM cost, not your entire bill amount. Now I'm saying 546. If you keep it on for 1 month, then you will say, oh, I got charged 1000 rupees. How come this 400 rupees extra, Rohit? This is for public IP, the networking and all. That is also okay. So keep that in mind when you're calculating your expenses. This is how it gets calculated. But if I have in my free tier, I got around 15,000 credit remaining, so I'll not get charged anything for now, as it's a free tier account. Okay, but if I am using a pay as you go, I'll definitely get charged. Okay, authentication type, there are 2 ways you can connect to this VM. I'll stick with password. I'll show you how this public key thing works later, but for now we'll stick with password. I'll just name username devopsmela, password I'll keep it test at 123456778. Don't worry, I'll be deleting this resource as soon as this lecture is over. So that is the same practice you guys have to do. As soon as you're done with this session, delete this resource group, the one which we just created. When you delete the resource group, everything inside the resource group will be automatically deleted. Remember that, guys. Okay, done. Now if you see, as I said, disk gets allocated. Now there's a OS, there is a requirement for a disk for your OS, which is, yeah, Ahmed, you have a question? Okay, so there's a OS disk size of 30 GB, which is allocated over here. Networking, we have created our own virtual network. So if you see, this is all automatically selected, and your VM1 is selected. Now if you see, a public IP is getting assigned. As I said, if you want to connect to internet, a public IP is required. NIC, a network security group, is also getting created. NSG is basically will help you filter your traffic. I'll talk about NSG and ESG in greater details in tomorrow's session. For now, just keep in mind, NSG is nothing but it's a network security group which gets auto created when you create a VM. That is to filter a traffic. What do I mean by filter? What type of traffic you want to allow. Like to this VM, I just want to allow port 22. What is port 22? Port 22 is SSH port. You can log in using port 22. You can even allow port 80 if you have any application installed, and if you want to access that application, then on port 80. If you have deployed SSL certificate, then it will be port 443. So that filtration, apart from these ports which I talked about, if I'm allowing these ports, apart from these ports, nothing else will be allowed. Like if you try to do access on some other port like 6000 port, no, it will be denied. So that is what NSG does. It will filter your network traffic. Now if you see this, I'm selecting my inbound port as port 22 only, nothing else. Management, it's okay, I am not enabling anything for now. Monitoring, I'm just disabling the monitoring part for now. Let's give a tag. Always give a tag, guys. Keep a practice of giving a tag. Review and create. Now if you see, there is a per hour cost. This is per hour. If you want to know the exact pricing, remind me, we'll see it tomorrow. We'll open the calculator and we'll calculate the exact pricing. Even though you cannot calculate the exact pricing because you'll not know how much networking in and out will happen. So, but yeah, you approximate and nearby pricing you can do in cloud. Exact that I'll get charged $100. No, that is not possible, my friend. You cannot do that such calculation. Nearby pricing, approx pricing, definitely you can do. So whenever you give, just like suppose you have been given a task that this is the infra which we are creating. There are n number of VMs, n number of storage account. So always give estimation. Don't be very particular. No, this is the cost. No, that will never happen. You'll not even come to know that how much network traffic came in, how much network traffic came out. What all things you can calculate? You can calculate public IP cost, you can calculate compute cost, you can calculate how much storage you're keeping, that cost, but you cannot calculate the network in and out cost. So never ever give exact pricing in cloud whenever you do a pricing. Okay, and plus there are additional charges of GST and all, so everything comes in picture. Okay, now this is my resource got created. Now if you go and look for resource group, as I said, everything is grouped together. If you go and look at the top, resource group, a resource group gets created, and if you see inside this resource group, there are so many resources created: a virtual network, VM, public IP, network security, network interface, a disk. See, with a VM, how many things got created. Now if you want to do a visualization, what all thing, how the flow is, how the data will be flowing, so this is how you can visualize. You have your VM, with the VM you have your OS disk. Hopefully this screen is visible, guys. Let me
Yes.
zoom in more. Then you have your network interface card, and let me zoom out a bit. You have your public IP, you have your virtual network, you have your security group. This is how you can do a complete visualization. That is even again a benefit of a resource group. At the resource group level, this is how you'll be able to do it. Now let me go and try to access this resource. So as I said, a public IP will be allocated. Now if I go to the public IP, and I'm into the VM right now, this is my VM, and if you come down, this is the private IP which got assigned. See, it's from the same range. Is it different? The only thing is one, it's from the same range, 10.1.0.4. only this particular number at the extreme right, the number will change. You can see the size and all. For now, let's go and copy this public IP. And how do I access this? How do I access this VM? So I use a bash shell on my Windows, guys. We'll talk about the bash shell tomorrow. For now, let's open CMD. So everyone is using Windows, anyone using Mac or anything else? If you're using, yeah, Mac also, Mac has terminal, Ahmed, then you can use your terminal to SSH. So it's very easy. You can do SSH followed by the username devopsmela and followed by the IP. Done. Free fingerprint, so say yes, put in your password. So from my outside, from my local system, I am able to connect to the VM. Now if you see this VM, we are all connected. If you do a ifconfig, you can see your IP 10.1.0.4. And if you want to see your Ubuntu, don't worry about this commands, guys. When we start Linux, I'll be covering all this for you, but for now this is how you are connected. This is because you have allowed in your NSG. If you go in networking in the VM, I'm there in the VM settings, networking, you have allowed port 22. That is the reason you're able to connect to this VM. This is because of NSG. I'll talk about NSG in greater details in tomorrow's session. Now if I go and delete this, I will not be able to connect to my VM after this. Let's see if it gets deleted. So this is how your network is getting filtered. Okay. Now if I try to connect, I'll not be able to connect to this VM. Okay, so I don't use this CMD, but if you guys are comfortable with DOS, please do use it. I suggest git bash. There are two purposes of this bash shell. One is for connecting to my Linux VMs, and the second is when we go through the git session, I'll be using this bash for creating repository, for doing creating branches, and many git operations I'll be doing through this bash. Okay. You can use putty. Yes, definitely I do have putty also in my system. I do have putty, but I don't use putty because it's better to use bash shell, and it's very easily it comes up and very easily you're able to do it. So yeah, putty for SSH will work. Definitely it will work. You can use putty, but you have to download this git bash. If you don't want to do SSH, that's totally fine, but in future when we are going through git session, at that time you will require this. Okay, so in order to download, just go on install git for Windows, just go to this link. This is from the official website. We are not going on any third-party website, guys. Not installing anything. Now where it went. For Mac OS also there is an option over here. Wait. See this. So this is for 60. Hopefully everyone is using a 64-bit. So just download this package and do next. Your git will get installed. Okay. Let me share this with you guys. And even I'm sharing, guys, if you have not registered for my course, please do register, because the session link will get changed eventually. So make sure to register, and if you have any doubt or query, please reach out to me on WhatsApp or write me an email. Okay, so make sure download this git and keep it. If you want to do SSH with putty or any other method, that is totally fine. And once you're done, like the way I'm done with the session, what I can do, I can simply go in the resource group, delete the resource group. This should be your practice. Once you're done with your work, practice, delete everything. Now everything will be deleted, so you have to be rest assured that nothing will get billed again to you. Now things are done and dusted. Now that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll talk about ESG.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes, Emma, tell me please.
Okay. Yeah. Before you delete the resource group, I just wanted to know, in case maybe you're working in a company and by mistake you delete the resource group, can you have it like a security feature that will kind of say, oh, are you sure you want to do this or not? Not just going there and just deleting things and everything disappeared.
Very good question, Ahmed. Yeah, definitely in companies you will not do any such things of deleting resource group directly. But in company there are policies. You can lock your resources, so it will not let you delete. You will have backups and all. Even though suppose you are the administrator, even administrator can make mistakes, correct? Right. So you will have policies where whatever resources you create, automatically that resource gets locked. So even by mistakenly from the administrative perspective you try to delete it, So what will happen? It will not let you delete. It will give you a clear-cut warning that your resource is locked. If you want to delete it, go and unlock it. So in such cases, you can do such things. So
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
don't worry. In companies, you will know it. This is just for practice, guys. Just so that, because we are paying for it. Okay, my company will not pay for it. You guys will be paying for this. Okay, if there are additional cost involved. So it's better. This is the practice what you need to do. Any questions, guys? Any other question? I'm done with this today's session. Tomorrow we'll talk about NSGs, ASGs, and very important topic, NAT gateway. So we'll spend couple of days understanding networking in greater details. Then we'll jump on to virtual machines. Virtual machine again we'll spend couple of days because there are multiple things in virtual: Windows machine, Ubuntu, Bastion host, all this availability set, virtual machine scale set, load balancer. There are many things in virtual machine which we need to understand. Okay, questions?
Uh, Rohit, in real-time scenario, like we need to install the virtual machine in the Azure like platform, or we need to install in the Windows machine.
Depending what type of what exactly you want to do. Like if you want to deploy an application which is Windows native, for example, ASP.NET, that's where Windows native application. So definitely you'll need a Windows VM. If you're deploying Kubernetes from scratch, so definitely you'll need a Linux machine for that, Linux machine set for that. So depending what your requirement is, based on that you will be creating your VMs in cloud.
Okay. And can you take one session like in Windows machine like VM, how we do the install the services like Kubernetes or Docker in the Windows machine in the Windows VM, like 1 or 2 session?
Docker, I do have Docker, frankly speaking. On my local system I do have Docker, but that is something got installed on top of Ubuntu. I have Ubuntu running on my Windows. On top of it I have installed Docker and I'm using it. That's not that user friendly. If you want Docker Kubernetes, that is something you should use Linux machine for that. For your local practice, if you want Docker to be installed, Kubernetes definitely out of question, Sanjay. But yeah,
No, no. My question is like when to install the VM like Oracle VM or VMware,
okay.
and top of that,
Okay, so you're talking about installing Oracle VM virtual box.
yes.
Yeah, I do have. I have two VMs already running in this Oracle virtual box. But if you have that good configuration like 16 GB of memory and all on your Windows, then definitely I suggest this, because setting up Oracle VM is and then installing Linux, it's very slow process. Nowadays, within a click, how much time it took to create a VM on cloud? Not even a minute, correct? So
Yes.
that is the reason I don't suggest Oracle VM and all. And plus, in for coming forward, we'll be installing Kubernetes, master node, worker node, and it will take complete resource of your local system. So and it will be no, for you it may be possible, for others it may not be possible, and it will take your complete resource. Your laptop, your system will be very sluggish. So that is the whole purpose why we are doing things on cloud, so that you get a look and feel how things work in real time. But yeah, Oracle VirtualBox, I have all the setups. I can share the setup with you guys, and with no time we can set up that also. That's no problem. Okay, we'll see it in future, no worries.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay guys, let's meet up tomorrow for same time, and let's continue this networking topic. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you.